All right. Welcome to the Viking Age podcast. I'm your host, Adam Patrick. I'm the editor and lead writer for thevikingage.com. And as always, I'm joined by my co host, Chris Schad, who writes for us here at the Viking Age, as well as Bring Me the News and Zone coverage. Before we start today's show, make sure to follow the Viking Age on Twitter and Facebook. And if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, please, and like this video. And if you already are subscribed, we greatly appreciate you doing that. All right, before we get started into today's topics, I got a little trivia for you, Chris, because something came across my research today about a certain jersey number. We're both, pretty good fans of Randy Moss, and he famously wore the number 84 jersey during his time with the Vikings, both times. So here's a little simple trivia question for you. Who was the first Vikings player to wear the number 84 jersey in the regular season after Moss was traded in 2005?
Oh, so after Moss was traded?
After he was traded.
Andre Allison.
Oh, you are correct. You know your 2007 Vikings.
I played too much Madden. Bottom end of the depth chart. We're 84, huh? Because he was still playing. But
I think I came across a quote today that said, if that Allison said, where he was like, if Randy Moss was good, they would have retired his number. So how'd that work out for you, Mr. Allison? Can you name anyone else who has worn 84 since Moss was traded in 2005?
Bucky Hodges.
Yes, that was preseason though. That was.
We're talking regular season games.
I'm just looking for because preseason they got 90 guys. There's got to be someone who wears.
Well, Irv Smith Jr., Cordero Patterson, Randy Moss himself.
Yeah. There's one more.
There is one more, huh?
Also a receiver. I'll give you that. Used to be on the Falcons. Okay, stumped you.
Yeah.
Michael Jenkins.
Gosh. He was only on the team for 2 games though.
He was there for 2 years, 2 seasons, 2011 and 2012. He was the Ponder years. He was.
Then it's amazing I got Andre Allison, but not Michael Jenkins.
Right.
I don't know. Not Chad, like Ponder could hit him. But,
if you want to go preseason 2, Chad Beebe, I think, also wore 84 in his rookie season or whatever before he became. What did he get? 12.
Yeah.
All right.
He was 12. Yep.
So 84. It should be retired. I think so. But
yeah,
number of retirements are hard in football because, like I said, you got to have 90 guys on your roster in the summer at least. All right, so the first topic, according to overthecap.com, the Vikings are currently a little over 10 million in cap space right now. So if they wanted to, they could still add a notable free agent or two before training camp begins at the end of July. It's just announced today, actually, that rookies will report on July 24th. So on Tuesday, USA Today's Tyler Dragon, which sounds so much like a wrestling name, like he's and a cruiserweight. I get that cruiserweight
just
feeling
kick down the forbidden door.
Just Tyler Dragon, fighting for the cruiserweight championship for sure. So USA Today's Tyler Dragon revealed that the Vikings have had multiple conversations with All-Pro defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh this offseason, and the Vikings are also a team to watch to sign Suh. I believe he's also been in contact with the Las Vegas Raiders. He said I think he said on ESPN, he was on like NFL Live or something, that the Bucs are out of the picture, which is the team that he spent the last, I believe, 2 or 3 seasons with. So, if the Vikings were able to, figure out a way to sign Ndamukong Suh, a former All-Pro defensive tackle, former number 2 overall pick by the Detroit Lions, what do you think his role would be with the Vikings?
I think he'd be a rotational guy, kind of a rotational pass rusher. He's not the player that he once was when he
Yep.
was with Detroit. That's how Vikings fans remember him. He kind of was. I didn't look at his snap totals before the podcast, but I mean, he was kind of a rotational, kind of veteran guy in Tampa Bay the last couple of years with the Bucks. So I mean, he's the kind of guy that the Vikings would need. I mean, right now they have, you got Harrison Phillips, who's kind of more of a run stuffer. Dalvin Tomlinson's the same way. I know Armin Watts had like 7 sacks last year, but he's probably not a full-time player. And especially when you're lined up in the nickel, which seems like they're going to be playing that more than the 3-4 base.
Right.
Somebody like Suh in the middle as a disruptor, somebody that can penetrate and get to the quarterback. I mean, if he winds up being Tom Johnson, I think it would be an excellent signing for the right price, because you got to have that guy that comes in and can attack the passer. So I think it would be a good signing. I'm just not real optimistic on the odds he actually comes here, because he sounds a lot more interested in playing for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Well, yeah, he's a. We mentioned this before we even started. He's a businessman kind of guy, and he's probably very aware that in Nevada there's no, I believe there's no state income tax, so he wouldn't have to deal with that where he does in Minnesota. Um, and just looking at the depth behind the defensive tackles for the Vikings, they've got James Lynch, Ty McGill, T.J. Smith, Jalen Twyman, Julian Taylor. So like these are not household names. They're not established veterans. These guys are going to all be fighting probably for their jobs when they get to training camp. So they do need depth at defensive tackle. They're taking, the Vikings are at least taking that approach, and it sounds like they've been talking to some candidates, some free agents, which because the talking to Suh would indicate that he's not the only one they've probably been talking to. But yeah, he's 35 years old. His last 2 years, he was the 74th best defensive tackle by PFF last season and 68th in 2020, and he hasn't been a top 15 defensive tackle since 2017. So yeah, he could be a top reserve. He could be a guy that fills in for guys when they're hurt, helps guys stay fresh during the game. I think it's good to note though that like even though his PFF grades or whatever were low, he's coming from a Bucks defense that ranked third against the run last season and first in 2020. The Vikings ranked 26th against the run in 2021. So, he might be a better pass rusher overall, but him just being there and knowing how to stop the run would just help them tremendously probably as well. What do you got?
But hey, now when Adam Zimmer watched the tape, he said everybody was in the right spot. Everybody was doing their thing, doing their right job. It just, they just got lucky. Okay.
Just got
Third
lucky
and 20 draws get
every
converted
time.
all the time. All
Every
right.
time. Yeah.
Stop this slander. Jesus.
Yeah. So even if, he's coming in, he's got experience in a very good run defense, with the Bucks, and Harrison Phillips also a very good run defender. So I think that's what the Vikings are trying to do with their defensive tackles, at least. Just make sure that they're good against the run. They don't need them to be excellent pass rushers. That's what Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter are for. They just need guys to clog up the middle, really. And Ndamukong Suh has a history of that. He has a history of not being very nice to Aaron Rodgers. So Vikings fans would love that. His wife is a native Minnesotan. She was a all-state basketball player, I believe, at Park High School in at Cottage Grove, Minnesota. So, and they just had twins, I think. So, maybe the grandparent. It'd be nice to have the grandparents closer by in Minnesota. So we'll see. We'll see. So should they sign Suh, or should they use the money to sign someone else? If Suh wants to come to the Vikings, should the Vikings sign him, or use what this 10 million, or they'd probably use around 6 at most. Should they use it to sign someone else?
I'm looking at a list of current free agents, and I mean,
Yeah.
I'm basically going off name recognition here,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, if you still want to add a receiver, Julio Jones is available, but I mean, he's probably available for like 2 or 3 games a year. at this rate. You have, I'm looking down the list here. Maybe Joe Hayden, JC Treader, I think
Yep.
would be the one name I could
I
think
think
of that
so.
I'd rather have
I
than
think that's the
Suh.
one. That's the one guy. But other than that, yeah. There's
I mean, Eddie Goldman's 28.
yeah.
So maybe you get a guy
Yeah.
that's 5 years younger. Although I think he's got some injury issues.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
Will Fuller.
it would be exciting. Like nothing's been exciting this offseason.
Right.
Like, the only time we've gotten like a spike in blood pressure is when we traded down with the Lions and took Lewis Seen. Like that's been it.
Yeah,
so here
sure.
we are.
And traded down again in the second round and then back up. That was the I'd say Zadarius Smith signing was probably the most exciting. The Vikings.
But some of that luster has worn off for me because I'm starting to second guess it. Because why did Baltimore just let him walk?
Yeah.
Like this is me being negative, but I mean at the same time, it's just like something's not right here. So, and the contract is where if he doesn't play, you don't pay him. So I mean, that's cool, but I mean, I'd rather have big splash signings with people that we know are going to be available for 16 games or 16, 17, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I mean, why are we even worried about how well they're going to play next year? Because they've been doing all these things like playing laser tag and softball together and top
ultimate
golf.
frisbee.
So they're good. They're good. Like they're fine.
Barbecue.
That all goes right to the football field. They're just gonna be lights out because they're just all great friends.
Who do you think is the life of the party at the barbecue? Like that's what I want to like. How would that party work out? Yeah,
it's probably Zadarius Smith.
You're right. Yeah.
Like even though he's new,
it up a little
he's very outgoing. Seems like that kind of guy. Always got a big smile on his face.
Kirk's like the meme in the corner where it's the guy with his little drink saying they don't know, just taking a sip of his water or whatever.
I feel like if Kirk Cousins was an Office character, he'd probably be Kevin. Just super awkward. Always.
But he seems smarter than Kevin. Like Kevin was kind of.
He does. He does. You're right. Okay.
He'd be Angela.
Yeah, that's a good. Or who's the guy from The Hangover? The dentist.
Ed Helms.
Yeah, when he came in and replaced Steve Carell as like the head guy or whatever. I think that'd be Kirk Cousins probably.
Yeah,
like he's the guy in charge, but like, is anyone really gonna follow what he says? Probably not.
Right. Andy Bernard, that's his name. Andy Bernard.
Yeah.
It was escaping me.
Yeah. So one episode we'll probably have to do like Office characters for the Vikings. I don't know how too familiar you are with that stuff. We do. We got 4 weeks, about a month till camp, till they check into camp. Then we gotta wait still a couple of days before anything really happens. All right. Next topic is Mr. Kyle Rudolph, still living in Minnesota. So he has some free time on his hands, and he recently had a discussion with Paul Allen on his radio show on KFAN. And they talked to Mr. Allen asked Mr. Rudolph if he would be interested in playing again for the Vikings, in the future or even this season. And Kyle Rudolph said, absolutely, he would love to play for the Vikings again. Now, Kyle Rudolph spent last season with the New York Giants. He is currently a free agent. He is 32 years old, and he has caught a total of 2 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. But Chris, why shouldn't the Vikings bring back Kyle Rudolph?
Because he's washed. Like, I'll go out and say it. Is that a secret? Like you just said it. He's got 2 touchdowns over the thing, and that was his big calling card. Is that he was a red zone threat. Great hands, awesome. Kirk Cousins said, "Hey, it's like throwing into a mattress," and then he never threw to him again for whatever reason. But I mean, most of the time it was throw the ball to Kyle Rudolph, have him fall forward 2 yards, and whatever. Personally, I've never been. Kyle Rudolph is one of the greatest tight ends statistically in Vikings history, and he's a very good all-around tight end when you think about it. But over the last 4 or 5 years, probably since when Irv Smith Jr. got drafted, it's just been weird how he's kind of like, no, I'm not declining. Why would I be declining? It is. I got a lot of game left. I got the sweatshirt. I found it at Target, and I decided to wear it.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
forgot about that. We're like
like
still
the whole thing
left in
was
the
just
tank.
weird. Like they
Yeah.
gave him that contract extension,
Yep.
and you know,
It,
and this is nothing against Kyle Rudolph the person. He's an A+ person. We saw
yep.
that Man of the Year a couple
Yep.
years ago when
Yep.
he built the wing to the Children's Hospital,
Yep.
and that's amazing. Eric Thompson of Vikings territory. He actually, Daily Norseman. I'm sorry, I got my websites mixed up, but
Whoa.
So, sorry, I'm plugging all the other Viking sites right now. Don't go to them. Only read our stuff at the Viking Age, even though I write for 3 or 4 different sites. It's okay. But yeah, he detailed, you know, his daughter had to go there, and
Yep.
you know, he detailed all that, and sounds like a wonderful place. As far as the football player goes, I don't know where he fits on this team. I know the Vikings are trying to win now. He would be an upgrade over Johnny Munt, but I mean,
Would he though?
here's the thing: when he wrote that,
because Munt knows the offense.
right, when he wrote that goodbye letter, he said goodbye to everybody: equipment managers, wide receivers, you know, trainers, head coaches, assistant coaches, janitors, backup quarterbacks, everybody except for Kirk Cousins, who is still there, by the way. And I mean, if I'm Kyle Rudolph and I don't have offers, somebody's, hey, you want to play for the Vikings? Yeah, I do. I'll take that, even if it's a veteran minimum. But for what it's worth, Darren Wolfson said that he is being courted by Tampa Bay, which if I'm
makes sense. That makes sense.
I'd love to replace Gronk until like week 12 when Gronk comes back.
Yeah, they're going to be competing. You know, what the thing is with the Bucks, you know they're competing for a Super Bowl. Like the Vikings, they say they want to be highly competitive or whatever, super competitive. But there's a good chance they could still miss the playoffs. Where the Bucks, unless Tom Brady gets hurt, they're in the playoffs. Like they're going to be in the playoffs. And you have Tom Brady throwing to you. So and you get to be in Tampa and not Minnesota. So it's not very hard choice to make. But yeah, I think he said in the interview that he's had, he's heard from multiple teams. I think everybody says that. Yeah.
I haven't heard from anyone. It's weird. My phone's not even ringing.
Yeah.
I want to play football. Nobody's reaching out.
We're still waiting.
That's odd.
So XFL, we're
waiting by the phone. Waiting for the Rock to call me.
But yeah, like he's a good tight end. You said statistically he's one of the best, but I wouldn't say he's, because I think Steve Jordan, he's still the best tight end in Vikings history. I don't know if I would put Rudolph as second best. I would even go as far as like Visanthe Shenko is, like, just in terms of impact, like, because he was good. He had some really good years, like with the Vikings, and like Rudolph, like you said, he gets the ball and like his legs are like made of cement, like he can't move anywhere. Although I would say in his first few years, he was a lot more of like a run after the catch guy, but then he got hurt a lot. So I think he kind of grew aware of that and probably was like, hey, I should step out of bounds more, or I should go down a little easier now because I want to keep playing for the whole season because that's going to help me stay in the league longer. Because like, it was like year 2 or something where like he broke his arm or leg against the Cowboys, making like a diving touchdown attempt or whatever. And you mentioned the Players Tribune letter that he wrote thanking Minnesota and the Vikings specifically. And he addressed in this interview about, a lot is made about, me not including Kirk Cousins in this letter. And here's what he had to say. He said, quote, "A lot has been brought up about my letter and not mentioning Kirk in it. But I mentioned, Teddy, Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Bradford. But those are guys that I was extremely, extremely close with. Not sure how this is helping his case so far. But he did say, I have no ill will or hard feelings, towards Kirk. Kirk is a phenomenal quarterback, and he's been unbelievably successful He's knocking on that door, and I know a deep playoff run and certainly a championship would put him right up there with everybody else in the league. Yeah, correct. So he said there's definitely no ill will there between him and I. Speaking of Kirk, but here's some other players that Kirk thanked in the letter. He thanked Matt Castle, you know,
He was really
Garrett
close
Brad,
with him. He
yeah,
went to
Garrett
Supple with him
Bradbury,
once.
Garrett Bradbury, and two guys he was teammates with for one season, Justin Jefferson and Steve Hutchinson. So,
Justin Jefferson, Tom McCready. It was life changing.
like, he can say that there's no, and there might not be ill will or whatever, but like clearly the people he listed, Bradford, Bridgewater, Matt Castle, uh, had more of an impact or a relationship with Rudolph than Kirk Cousins has, and that's not a problem. You're not going to get along with everybody, in the locker room. There's over 50 guys in the locker room. We know everyone's not going to get along, but don't just sit there and be like, "Oh no, we're fine, we're fine." Um, do we believe Rudolph's explanation, not including Cousins in his letter?
Okay, I'm not going to call him a liar, but there's a little bit of damage control going on here, I
Oh
feel.
yeah, yeah,
Like, like we said, maybe the phone's not ringing. Maybe he's trying to campaign a little bit. Just kind of, he's on, PA's podcast, who
mhm.
happens to be friends with, and
It's the
talks and
official.
texts with a lot of
Well, it's the
people he doesn't know. Yeah.
yeah, it's the official radio station or the Vikings, right?
Right. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
there's a little bit of a favor going on. I don't know. But uh, I don't know. Like, obviously, he's going to say all the right things, especially if he wants to find a team for next year. And again, if you want to roll Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith Jr. on the field, as long as Irv Smith Jr. is option A, which is
yeah,
something the staff did not do while Kyle Rudolph was here,
right.
I'm fine with it. I just worry how much Rudolph has left as a football player. So I don't think he actually hated Cousins, as some of us have kind of said,
Right.
because I don't think Kirk's a hateable guy. I don't think, like, you look at the only reason you would hate Kirk is because of his, end of game performance. And let's face the facts here. Kyle Rudolph's a receiver. If he feels that Kirk wasn't throwing him the ball enough, he's going to be a little upset. Like, that's any receiver, right?
He
So,
was, wasn't he?
yeah. Didn't he rip him with the Giants too? Or did he rip they
Zimmer, I
took
think.
some comments about, oh, this is the first time I've had an offensive coach before.
It
And it
was
was like,
more
ah,
yeah, it was more about Zimmer, and it wasn't directly about Zimmer, but he was saying, like, how it's nice to have an offensive-minded coach,
mm-hmm.
which, yeah, everyone ran away with, including myself, but, it was off-season qu it's an off-season quote, come on, what do you think is gonna
Everybody
happen?
gets them
And he's in New
clicks.
York, so, they're gonna do that. Um, he also talked about, speaking of Zimmer, he was asked about, was he surprised that Zimmer and Spielman were let go? Um, and he kind of took a different route that a lot of people have been taking this offseason, where he kind of, praised what Zimmer and Spielman were able to do the last 8 years. He called them unbelievably successful. I think he said, like, I'd be hard pressed to find a better group of core players around the league during those 8 years. And he just said it's really just about championships, and they didn't win one, and so that's why they're not here. But you know, do we think that the way that Rudolph approached it, because we haven't heard this a lot, like this point of view of like they did a lot of good things, but they things didn't work out in the end. That's why they're gone. It's mostly been like things were terrible. It's fear based. Like everything's toxic. Get them out of here. That's been what we've heard most of the time. But do we think that Rudolph's approach is the thought process of maybe the minority, or is it the majority and it's kind of like a more of a silent majority?
I was talking with a friend this morning about the Vikings a little bit, and I said there's a very real scenario at the end of this season where we sit there and go, wow, that meanie was a really good coach,
Yeah.
because we're gonna get a lot of answers this year. I think that's why this season's kind of exciting. We won't feel the excitement until week one, But this is the same group of players that has
Yep.
won 7 games lost 9 games in back-to-back seasons. So was it the coach or was it the players? And part of me in the back of my mind's a little bit upset that we're wasting a year trying to find this out. Like, I'd rather just burn it to the ground and start
Yeah.
all over and
It's
try and
everyone's
build a
fault.
Super
Just
Bowl.
get everyone
Yeah.
out of here.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're a player, like, you're not going to sit there and say, well, yeah, I didn't do my job and whatever. No, yeah, I mean, especially a coach like Zimmer, who wasn't a player's coach, you're going to be like, his fault, completely his fault. It was not mine. I didn't draw up the scheme. I didn't hire Clint Kubiak as my offensive coordinator. I didn't hire my son as a co-defensive coordinator. I don't have, I mean, yeah, this is typical stuff. So I think that Rudolph is right, because look at the first 4 years of the Zimmer era. They were pretty dang good. They got to an NFC championship game. Then, the second 4, there's a certain event that corresponded with that. But I mean, by the end of the tenure, it had run its course.
For sure.
Like, people are just upset because of the way the last 2 years ended. And I mean, you had all those stories like the PowerPoint presentation, people want to point at things like the corners going rogue in Green Bay. Like,
and that was during the first 4 years.
Stuff when you're fired, but they'll
that
remember
was
the good stuff while you're here.
That was during the first 4 years, so that wasn't even within the
Yeah.
last 2 years. Yeah, I think, sometimes I fall into this where, like, yeah, Kirk Cousins came there in 2018. Then I also forget sometimes, Zimmer still has a job to do. Like, just because, he didn't like that they brought in a quarterback that he didn't want doesn't mean that he shouldn't try and get the most out of that player. And I feel like sometimes looking back, he lost, like, maybe the drive that he had during the first 4 years, where, like, this is all his team, where, he realizes he's got to realize, like, not everything's going to work out the way that you want. He should have known that, because, like, when Teddy went down and a bunch of his eye almost fell out, like, and he battled through all that stuff and adversity, and Bradford going down in 2017, like, they were able to get through all that. And then he literally gets, like, this great team handed to him in 2018, and things just kind of fall apart. And it was, I think I would love to say that it wasn't all Zimmer's fault, and it was like, "Oh, it's Kirk Cousins. He ruined everything." But, like, definitely played a part in that. But I do feel like he brought a lot of good to the Vikings, and he's not people aren't probably gonna realize that until either this team struggles or within a few years, and they look back and they're like, "Oh, yeah, like, Zimmer, he was a good coach."
It's a
Yeah.
lot like Dennis Green, I
Oh,
think.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of people towards the end were like, well, this guy can't get us over the hump. But I mean, what he was able to do to turn this franchise around and turn it into a contending team, and even eventually a Super Bowl contending team, a team that
With
should have
those
won the Super
quarterbacks.
Bowl. Yeah, with the quarterbacks that he had.
Yeah.
Jeff George, Randall Cunningham, Dante Culpepper at the end. I mean, he had Warren Moon.
Brad Johnson.
Not that Warren Moon's a bad quarterback, but I mean,
he was at the end of it. It's the end of his career, yeah.
Right.
Brad Johnson.
Bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah, we don't appreciate stuff probably as much as we should until they're gone. And I think that's probably going to be the case with Zimmer. It's funny. I was watching. There's like a documentary on, I think it's ESPN Plus, called like Dream On, about the '96 U.S. women's basketball team, and how they kind of launched the WNBA through that. I'm not like a WNBA fan, but I've always been interested in that kind of stuff, like the documentaries. And then their coach was like the biggest I can't even say this word.
Disciplinarian.
Yeah. Disciplinarian.
Yeah.
There you go. Disciplinarian. And like she was like playing mind games and saying stuff in the press and like working them to like tiring them out. They all wanted to quit like every day. And I'm like, she's a female Mike Zimmer. Like, she's doing like exactly what he would do. And you know what? They went undefeated like the summer before the Olympics, like went 50-0. And I'm like, yeah, that's why he does that stuff, because he knows if Zimmer had the viewpoint where, like, if I'm your toughest opponent, then everyone else is going to be way easier. And that worked. But at the end, guys just didn't really buy into it, and they had to figure out a different option.
And players talk too. So when you have a player
Yeah.
like in Los Angeles with Sean McVay,
Yeah.
and they're talking to Justin Jefferson like, "Oh, dude, it's awesome. They just give us Veterans Days
Yeah.
and stuff. It's
Yeah.
it's pretty
Yeah.
amazing." I mean, even Zimmer went to Veterans Days last year to kind of
He did.
save face a little bit,
Yeah.
but it just was too late by that point, and the game
Yeah.
has changed with how players are managed, how players are treated by their organizations, even like Buffalo with Stephon Diggs. You don't think Stephon
Yeah.
Diggs still talks to Adam Thielen every once in a while and says, "Man, in Buffalo, it is so much different over here. Like, you have no idea." Like, I think those things happen.
I don't know if he talks to Adam Thielen. I don't believe too much into that friendship. I don't know if that was more of a created thing than it really is. That's another side note. I think he's more friends with Justin Jefferson than he is with Adam Thielen. Actually, those two interact on like social media all the time. Actually, all right, Kyle Rudolph. We'll see where he goes. Next topic before we get out of here. Another former Viking, Trey Waynes. He did not go on KFan and talk to Paul Allen. Instead, he went on the very notable Geary and Stein sports show podcast, and he revealed that he's had some interest from teams this offseason. He's been in the league for 7 years. He's a free agent. So he's had some interest from teams, including the Eagles, which is where former Viking Anthony Harris is right now, and Jonathan Gannon is their defensive coordinator. Used to be on the Viking staff as well. However, Waynes also said that he's not really exploring anything, and that in his head he's basically done with football. He said that he's not really looking to make an official announcement or anything like that, but he's basically retired from the NFL. So Wayne's with the Bengals, but he was only able to appear in 24% of the team's games during his tenure due to multiple injuries. So it sounds like Trey Waynes, after 7 seasons, is retiring from the NFL. Are shorter NFL careers like this one, do you think they're becoming the new normal, or are they still kind of not the norm?
I think players now understand the risk that
Yep.
comes with playing football. So a player like Trey Waynes could probably still be a starter or at least a depth player on a good team. Might look at this and go, "Hey, I got my money.
Yep. He
I
did. He
played
did.
7 years in the NFL.
Bengals fans are happy
I'm
about that.
I'm 30 years old. I just don't want to do this anymore."
Yeah.
And it's totally understandable. So I think that Robert Smith was the first one that did it, where he went 7 years. I think his last one was
Barry Sanders too.
yeah, his last year was like, I think both of them, they were over 1,000 yards in their last year, and they said, "Yeah, we're good." I mean,
think
Barry Sanders was a different decision because I play for the Lions, man. Like, I'm not gonna do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then like Robert Smith was just like, "Nah, I'm gonna try and be a doctor or something."
Yeah.
I remember that being totally shocking as a
For
kid. Like,
sure.
what? He retired?
Was that
But
2000? I think that was 2001 or
2001, because then
yeah.
they drafted Michael Bennett the following year. MB23. I had a Michael Bennett jersey. I
Hey,
loved Michael Bennett.
one time Pro Bowler. Okay, don't
He
hate
was
on Michael
really
Bennett.
fast and
He
couldn't do
was.
anything else.
He was really fast. He was really
Really
fast.
fast and could get hurt.
He was really fast in
He was
Madden.
so fast that when he got hit, it was just so much force he
Yeah.
got hurt.
I remember using him in Madden a lot,
Oh
just
yeah.
as a receiver. He just blow by people.
Use him on that stretch play and just go to the outside and run past everybody.
I know.
99 speed, man.
Yeah, I know Aaron Donald just signed like a massive new deal or whatever. But you can look at him because there was a bunch of chatter about him just stepping away, and he's only been in the league for 7 or 8 years, and he was like, "It's been my plan the whole time to just play for like 7 or 8 years, get my money,
Mhm.
and get out of here." And then just like start the rest of my life, because we gotta like remember, like, when these guys say they're retiring, they're not retiring at like our retiring age, which was like 65.
Mhm.
It's probably older now because no one has any money anymore. Um, but these guys are retiring at like 30, 31, 32. Like, they still have like their whole life ahead of them, and they want to be able to enjoy it and be able to walk, be able to hang out with their kids. Like I see a lot of these guys, like they have young kids, and like I just want to like be there with my kids, see what happens, because it's tough, man. Like being away from your family, like these being in the NFL is like you get millions of dollars, but these guys make a lot of sacrifices too, and that includes like being away from their family for a good portion of every year. And that weighs on some guys. And I think this is gonna be what Wayne's is doing is probably gonna be more of the normal. I think you look at maybe not for every position because you could look at kickers and punters and stuff, and even quarterbacks. So you be a backup quarterback for a while. But positions that are more physical, like a defensive tackle, a cornerback, offensive line, running back especially. Like I could see Dalvin Cook walking away like after his contract's up, his current one, wherever he ends up. Um, it's just a tough sport. It's brutal on your body. It is safer than it was, but still, guys banging into each other over 300 pounds, 250 pounds. Like, it's a tough sport. So I don't blame Wayne's at all. What do
And
you
I
got?
remember in high school, I was working at McDonald's,
Mm.
and the McDonald's I worked at was right next to St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, which is part of Mayo, the
Yep.
worldwide kind of everybody
Yeah.
knows what that is.
Yeah.
So there's this
The
guy that
condiment.
came in. What's that?
The
Yeah, the
condiment.
condiment. We just produce a lot of mayo in Rochester. No, this guy, I'm pretty sure he was getting a checkup at
Mhm.
St. Mary's or something. And he stopped by McDonald's to get some coffee, and he was wearing, and I don't know why, but he was wearing his green NFL alumni jacket. I didn't even know they gave this out. Maybe it was like an old school thing, but
Like a
he
suit
had a
jacket?
cane. Yeah, it was like the Blazers they give out for the Hall of
Yeah.
Fame. It was that,
He
and it
was
was
wearing it?
green, and it said NFL alumni. So
Okay.
I don't know, but the guy was sitting there and he was ordering his coffee, and I saw his blazer. I'm like, oh yeah, that's really cool. And he's like, I regret playing as long as I did, basically. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something along those lines. So you
Well,
see these players retiring now, like that's
yeah.
what I think about is that guy that walked into a McDonald's with a cane, barely able to walk.
For sure, and a lot of those guys got paid not even close to what these guys paid now. Where like you get your second contract,
Mm-hmm.
you're good. You're probably good. You could walk away after that contract's up. Like Justin Jefferson, if he wanted to, at the end of his next contract, he could be done, which might even
Mm-hmm.
be before he's 30, because he's about to get so much money. It's gonna be stupid. But looking talking about Wayne's to get us out of here. Um, looking back at the Mike Zimmer era, where do you think Wayne's ranks among the Vikings first round picks from the Mike Zimmer
So
era?
I got to think of the first round picks to begin
Okay.
with. I would say
Okay.
number one is Justin Jefferson.
Correct.
Even, even though it's only been 2 years, the trajectory he's on is incredible.
Yeah.
Two is Anthony Barr.
Yep.
Then it kind of gets murky because Teddy's knee exploded.
Yeah, but
So
he
that
went to
was
the Pro Bowl.
he he did. Teddy Bridgewater and
Went to
Mitchell
the
Trubisky,
playoffs.
Pro Bowl quarterback.
Yep.
And you don't know what happened in 2015. We'll talk about that on Monday. But
Yeah,
so
right.
let's think it through here. So you got Teddy Bridgewater as the other 2014. You have
Yep.
Trey Waynes in 2015.
That's about it.
2016 was Laquan
Yep.
Treadwell.
Yep.
2017 you trade your first rounder. 2018 was Mike Hughes.
Yep.
2019 was Garrett Bradbury. Oh my
Yep.
God. Then Jeff Gladney and
Jefferson.
Christian
Jefferson.
Darrisaw.
Yep.
Yeah, I mentioned Jefferson. That's why I'm not saying him.
Yeah.
But so
Would
Wayne's maybe third,
oh
maybe
you put
fourth.
him above Teddy?
Yeah, because Teddy didn't last that long. And plus, he didn't play that great when he was on the field. I love Teddy. I love Teddy, the human being, because of his personality, leadership, and all that stuff. But Wayne's was a starting corner for 4 or 5 years for the Vikings. I mean, that's what you want out of your draft picks. So it's not Teddy's fault, but I would put Trey Waynes ahead of Teddy. How about you?
I got Wayne's at 4 behind Teddy.
Okay.
I just think Teddy was. It's probably just because of his position. I think he was just able to make a bigger impact. And you could tell right away when he was a rookie, like he didn't have it all, but like as soon as he came in, like it was a different team.
Mm-hmm.
Where Wayne's, I feel like it took him a few years to even like become a starter. Like he struggled those first 2 years. And there was a lot of questions like, could he even be a starter? And then he got in there, he was solid, but there was still a lot of times where he would be getting burned downfield and or like drawing a flag downfield, or pulling up for an injury downfield. Like I appreciate what Waynes did for the Vikings, but I was never the biggest Trey Waynes fan. I don't think he lived up to expectations. Um, I just think he was pretty underwhelming. But there weren't really a whole lot of good corners in that draft. Looking back, there was Marcus Peters, and that was probably about it as far as
Mhm.
guys coming out of that draft. But I put him at 4, but just because you look at the rest of the first round picks, like I would love to put Darisaw at 4 or 3 or whatever, but we still don't know enough about him. He's barely been on the field. I think he's got a good chance to get up that list pretty quickly, like Jefferson. But yeah, the rest of those guys, like Bradbury, I have Bradbury like at number 5. That says so much about the first
Yeah.
round picks that the Vikings had in the last 8 years. That Bradbury is 5. Then I got Mike Hughes and Treadwell as last, of course, because come on, Treadwell. But yeah, that's it. I got him at 4. I had same as you, Jefferson and Barr at the top. And then yeah, just Teddy at number 3 for me because I just can't shake the Teddy. So I was gonna be there in our heart. That's what we got for today. Chris kind of mentioned it already that we're gonna be looking at the infamous 2015 wild card loss to the Seattle Seahawks, also known as the Blair Walsh game, on Monday as part of our rewatchable series. So come
The
check that out.
shank at the bank.
Yeah, yeah, the one that Chris thought went in actually before
I
he
wasn't
even.
alone.
Yeah.
I wasn't
um,
alone.
so we'll talk about that. That'll be I wouldn't say fun, but it'll be interesting to try and learn some stuff about that. So make sure you follow the Viking Age on Twitter and Facebook. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like this video and subscribe. But until next time on Monday, Chris and I will talk to you later.